Wow, my microphone's like way over there. These random shows.
Yes,
So,
another random episode of Dollars and Nonsense, part
no,
two.
dollars and nonsense. It's funny. I told you I haven't actually went back and watched any of these, mostly because I was just scared how stupid we looked, to be completely honest. Um, and so the last episode was the first one I actually went back and watched. So I finally understand dollars and nonsense because you said early in the show, dollar. Let's get to the dollars and cents, and then I'm like, oh man, he's such a marketer.
Yeah,
They really
work
do
in
ruin
marketing.
everything.
Dude, I've just been on a binge this week of roasting any ad that I see that or promotion. It's just so much bad marketing and advertising going on out there right now. It's just lazy.
Yep.
Like for example, in well, I have a few examples in the cannabis space specifically, but there's one going around right now that I didn't share with you, but I noticed that a few companies are using, well, most companies now use stock images. And personally, I hate stock images because they're
Me
not
too.
genuine at all. They're not genuine, and people can see right through it. But there's this one, I guess, model that has been chosen now by multiple companies that I've seen. These companies are basically using stock images with the same model, but for different scenarios. I've seen him floating around in the cannabis space, and then recently I also saw him in an advertisement for like like malware.
Huh.
Antivirus company used a stock photo of him in their ads too. So I'm like, this
You,
guy is just all over the place
who
now.
is this guy? Because there's a guy that did that for video commercials.
Oh, he
Like he
was the
was
video
like the
commercial guy.
startup ad guy.
The thing is, I don't think it's intentional at all. These people are just using stock photos from
Yeah.
a handful of these sites. But it's so funny just to be on LinkedIn. You scroll a few times, you see him. Okay, some cannabis magazine is
That's just
advertising something, and
laziness.
it's lazy.
It's
Marketing
lazy. Like
is
I
lazy.
don't have a problem with stock imagery or video, but like make it unique. Like I use Epidemic Sound for my audio, right? The one thing I don't do is use the top popular song.
Oh,
Because
right.
like you see the same thing in YouTube. You'll watch a Peter McKinnon video and then a Cody Warner video and then a fucking Chris Howe video. Oh, there we go. Well, hello, mom. Um, and you'll get like the same track, the same audio track, which sometimes works okay, sometimes it doesn't. It's interesting to see different styles editing the music, but then I'm looking for music for my video. I'm like, yeah, no, because that reminds me of Peter McKinnon.
Right.
It's
And at the
yeah,
end of
it's
the day,
just
you're trying to
it's
be
lazy.
different.
Yeah.
You don't want
Also,
to
Peter
watch the
McKinnon doesn't use
same
trap, and
content.
that's all I use on my videos. Half
Trey,
half of
the
me
trap
uses
god.
trap just because you and Andrew made fun of me for doing that.
Yeah, we didn't think you'd keep doing it.
Yeah, and now I just keep doing it because one, it's like I would call trap, at least when you turn the volumes down on the YouTube video. It's like the modern elevator music. It is.
Trap
It's like
is
it's
modern
consistent.
elevator day,
It's not
elevator music.
ridiculously like intense. Like a lot of the other genres, you have to deal with like vocals and like get rid of those. You got to deal with like lots and up and downs. Like trap is pretty like just like consistent, and it's a lot of bass and not a lot of highs, which conflict with the voice.
I
So
see.
quite a bit of thought has gone into remaining trap.
That's why you're the trap
It's
queen.
also only one letter off from my name, so there's that.
That's that is very true. Don't you spell your name Traey though?
No, it's TREA, as according to my coworker in a Slack message earlier, who has now worked with me for over a year. So thanks, Jim.
Trey Tree
I
Tria.
guarantee he doesn't watch this podcast.
Tria.
Tria. Yeah, my name is Tria. Like that's I don't
Tria the
know. I feel
trap
like
queen.
there's a lot of ways to spell my name, right? TRETRAY, and I get that's a random spelling. But TREA, That doesn't spell Trey.
It's got to be just a typo. Jim typoed.
It's not a typo.
Oh, he's an
You would
offender of
you would know.
misspelling. Yeah,
You would know. So what are
I
we
guess
talking about
so.
tonight? What do you want to talk about? Anything you want to talk about? We got like
Um,
lots of stuff going on. Oh,
yeah,
personal line
we're
of
a couple
credit.
days.
So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
on the topic of our emergency funds, um, and how I'm planning to use credit to fill my emergency fund. And I really like my M1 Finance line of credit, but I've now used all of that to, go and buy a house. I was like, what other credit lines can I get? Because all I know of is a HELOC, a RELOC, and a portfolio line of credit. But I didn't really even know about a portfolio line of credit until like a month ago. So I'm like, are there other lines of credit? I know there's a business line of credit, but I don't have a business that makes revenue right now, so
So wait,
it's not going to work.
you have a HELOC, you have a RELOC, and now we're talking
I
about
do not have a
PLOCs.
RELOC, but I do know it exists. A RELOC, for anyone
Okay.
listening, is a rental equity
Line of
line of
credit.
credit. It's
And
a
now we
it's a
got
HELOC for a
PLOC.
rental. So what I discovered was that there are things called personal lines of credit. These come in both secured and unsecured fashions. So secured would be a lot more like your portfolio line of credit with M1, where if it goes too low, they're just going to sell you stocks. So I've seen those. There's also unsecured, which typically are lower with potentially higher interest rates, but there's no collateral.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know what it takes to apply, but like you can potentially get on the low side like a $25,000 credit limit, and it would look like it was similar to my HELOC rates. It was like somewhere between 7 and 9%, significantly lower than a credit card was. So after we close on this house in 2 days,
2 days.
I'm gonna apply for one and see what happens. So check back
What do
next
you
week, I guess.
what are you going to use a PLOC for?
Right now, it's just gonna be there. It'll be augmenting my emergency fund. I have all that cash in my emergency fund that I'm probably going to scrape off to another part of the table. I've been playing a lot of poker, uh, and yeah, so it'll just be
Hopefully not
there.
with the money.
It'll just be there for an emergency fund, partially to like backfill for my M1, because with the M1 credit line gone, most of my other credit lines are very high interest credit cards.
Mm.
And no, I haven't paid poker for money yet. I don't think you can play poker for money online anymore.
Oh man, it must be tough for those quarantining.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the casinos are open now, though.
Yeah, that is true. That is.
But
They
yeah,
can
I've
get
been
their
playing a
fix.
lot of poker. Well, I said last week that I was going to read a poker strategy book. It didn't end up happening. I'll talk about what I am reading. But it's kind of like, how do you effectively learn strategy of something if you don't do it? And I've always liked poker. It was always fun. But now that I'm learning the strategy of it, it's too much fun.
Well, you're a big hobby guy. You go deep into hobbies.
I have gone deep, real deep. Like, there's a whole poker YouTube world.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's
YouTube has
lots of
everything.
like pro poker players that like have names that people recognize, and like, they're like celebrities. I'm like, whoa. Also, Kevin Hart is a great poker player and plays high stake tables with these pros. So does Jason Calcanis.
Kevin Hart's the one that surprises me.
Dude, I actually started down the YouTube poker tournament watching path because Kevin Hart was in the thumbnail. I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. And he was really good. And, Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart, he was freaking hilarious to watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say you'd watch it just for
Like, it
him.
was incredibly entertaining, but also he did very well. He might have even won the table. And he was playing against pros. Like, there were a couple of recreational players, but most of them were pros. So that was nuts. So, yeah. So, I was going to read the poker strategy book. I realized I hadn't purchased that yet. I thought I had. and I have already purchased the Angel Investing book by Jason Calacanis that was recommended to me by like a ton of people, including Ryan. Thank you for listening, Ryan. And so I started reading that one.
Nice.
It's been pretty good so far. Very entertaining chapter this morning. This was written like 3 or 4 years ago. So, and I just don't really believe this, but the chapter was titled, "Do You Need to Live in Silicon Valley to Be an Investor?" The content of this chapter was yes, period. Next chapter.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. It was really, like, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Especially the way it was structured on my page. It was like the title said yes, period, and then it was like the next page, but it was like at the bottom. So you're like, oh, so he's going to oh, no, that's the next chapter. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. So that was entertaining. But I appreciated the succinctness of the chapter. Yes.
Yeah. Those are my kind of books. Just an entire book of yes, no.
It's very easy to read so
answers.
far. I've blown through quite a bit of it so far. It's way easier to read than the dense food fix book that I finished. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's got me down the path of figuring out more about angel investing as well, like how to get into some of those things and finding deals and things like that. So.
And you're familiar with Silicon Valley, so you know.
Yeah, I feel like I checked the box of live in Silicon Valley by having lived in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Because I think it was worth it because I built a decent network in the startup world there. You know, like I have a fair number of connections there that I can lean on to have conversations about things like angel investing and investing in real estate.
Yeah. You had your first real estate investment there.
I did, yeah. I like to say that it went horribly, but it actually resulted in a great profit. So,
well, the rental piece.
The rental piece was so awful. It's funny.
Appreciation.
I look back on that. You know, I just did that whole binge of watching all my old YouTube videos the other day, and I did a video. I think it was the last time I was in San Jose. About my worst real estate investment ever, and it was that one, and it was also my only real estate investment, so, you know, clickbait. But I look back on it and I'm like, I kind of want to like throw it through our like property analysis spreadsheet, because I'm like, after you take in like what's it called, debt pay down, mortgage pay down, whatever you get for paying down your mortgage. Mm-hmm. After you take that into account, and I was accounting for pretty high maintenance costs for that, but because it had been maintained so well, I think I could lower those. I'd be curious, like, I only looked at the cash flow side because at that point in time I was so focused on cash flow, which obviously I've shifted out of a bit. Well, not a bit, all of it, almost all of it. So I'm curious, like, if I looked at it from like our IRR analysis that we do now, that takes into account appreciation and rent and increases in rent and expenses over time, I'm curious what that would actually look like. Granted, I don't want to have rental property in California, so I don't mind that I sold it. And I only have the portfolio that I have today because I sold the house. My entire M1 portfolio is directly from that house.
Yeah. The appreciation worked out.
It did, yeah. It ended up being like a 10% annualized appreciation.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that obviously doesn't take into account like expenses and things like that, but still was great. And it was tax-free because we lived in it for 2 out of the last 5 years. Yeah, that's key. If you sell a house, make sure you live in it for 2 of the last 5 years. They don't have to be the most recent 2 years. They don't even have to be 2 consecutive years, but it has to be 2 out of the last 5.
So does that mean we're going to go live in a few houses in Florida?
No. If I could house hack, I would house hack, but we're too far along with family and kids and all that stuff for it to even be like practical.
Yeah. And I wish out here in Southern California, those were more abundant. They're pretty slim pickings now.
Yeah, and the California tenant laws weren't so horrible.
Yeah. So here we are renting.
Here you are renting. It's not bad. It's not bad to rent.
Yeah. I like to think I'm a good tenant.
I mean, do you pay your rent on time?
Always.
There you go. You're a good tenant.
I've even been somewhat of a handyman here.
Oh yeah.
I look at it as a way of, like we got a great deal on rent. It's like $200 to $300 under what I've found in the area. So $200 to $300 under market, but the landlord basically wants, me to take a stab at anything little that comes up so they don't have to deal with it. I look at it as a way to practice handyman stuff for when I actually own a house.
Yeah, because there's a lot of that when you own a house.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, well,
like I'm pretty sure I haven't come downstairs to the office in the morning in like the last week and not been pulled back upstairs because something else is broken. Yesterday was our TV. So we have a new TV now.
Oh, which TV did you get?
Dude, TVs, one, are just crazy cheap now. I've had our TV forever. It's like a 55-inch plasma TV. Like I don't even think they make plasmas anymore.
Wow, I haven't heard plasma since 2006.
Plasma was a jam back then. It was the only way to get like true blacks because LEDs were like way too backlit. Anyways, so that went out. So Kimmy ran to Costco, and she sent me a picture of a few of them. They had this one. It was called a Hisense, Hisense, and it had Roku built in, which we use Roku all the damn time. So that was great.
There you go.
There's not too many of them actually have Roku built in. 55-inch, $280.
Dang.
For a 55-inch with Roku built in, it was like a 1080. No, it was a 4K LED. I'm like, yeah, do that one. For $280,
Damn.
you can just throw it away.
I know. We just got like a 50-inch, but I think it was about $300.
Yeah, well, when I look on Costco's website, I actually didn't see that one. I saw a bunch of others that were like in the 350 to 380 range for what size we were looking for, and they didn't have Roku built in. So I'm like, well, that one sounds amazing. Did it like a quick Google search to make sure their reviews weren't horrible, but they weren't. They were actually pretty good. So I don't know.
Nice. Hey, win-win.
Yeah. So, yeah, houses cost a lot. They suck more out of your soul than they do out of your bank account, though, I feel like.
But yeah, can't wait to be a homeowner.
Yeah, it's super fun, super rewarding. Just make sure it's looked at least like through a foggy lens of an investment. Like at least convince yourself that it could maybe be an investment if the right things happened.
Hey, it worked out for you in California.
I would say in your current, in both of our current financial situations, right? I was talking to someone earlier today, and he was like, "Yeah, you and I, like, we're both kind of the same. We don't want to live in $1 million house. Well, one, I do live in $1 million house, but I didn't get the chance to interject there, but I wanted to be like, yeah, I don't want to in my current financial situation, but when I reach the point of excess, yeah, I do. I do want to live in like a $15 million mansion.
It's like at some point we will.
I do want to.
I would love that 10-car garage.
I mean, I would love a private jet. Private jet, a GTR Pro, a $15 million mansion on the beach.
There are business cases to be made there, especially for the jet.
For the jet,
that will help us
total
move.
Business write-off.
That will help us move so much quicker on properties.
It would, though. That actually is not even fake. That's real. Yeah. That's real stuff there.
There's a legitimate business case to be made.
Especially if the IRS goes back and watches these videos when they're trying to make a case against us. That's a real case. That's real.
Yeah. We're doing it live, and we're showing like private jet business case.
So I was this I guess this just goes to like my mindset and a lot of this stuff. I was having a conversation with my contractor today doing the kitchen project, and we got on the subject of real estate investing. Oh, because he was asking if it was our first house, and I'm like, no, this is our second house, and actually I'm closing on my first investment property tomorrow or Friday or whatever I said. He's like, oh, cool. Yeah, I have a couple of investment properties, and he's got 2 or 3. And there's been so many people that I've talked to that have that exact same response. They're like, oh, yeah, I have a couple of investment properties and here and there. And I'm like, man, everyone has a few investment properties. I want 100. Like, I want so many.
I mean, maybe they're just starting with a few.
No, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're not starting with just a few based on the conversation with anyone, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Because if you want to own 100, that's just like a freaking full-time business. You know, that's not passively managing a couple of properties. That's you're running a real estate empire or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. It reminds me more and more, like, as I like look at the landscape and I'm like, man, everyone's doing real estate investing. I saw an article the other day that was talking about how 50% of millennials are buying an investment property versus buying a house for themselves. Now, I don't know how accurate all of that data was, but it was an interesting article, at least the sections that I read through.
That is actually interesting.
But when I read that sort of stuff, I'm like, man,
other generations.
Is this place, is it too saturated? Are there too many people doing this? But then I have conversations like that, and I'm like, no, we're doing this at an entirely different level.
Or yeah, we're trying to do it at a different level. We're not just trying to add a couple properties just to have investment properties.
Exactly. Like, those people are not trying to finance deals through private money and get them all paid for and get 20% equity without any money down.
Yeah, we're thinking about it a little differently.
Yeah.
For now, pretty soon, I'm sure there are like the 5-10% of investors that are thinking that have the similar ambition.
No, for sure. I would say there's a ton of people that are just buying a property here and there for the cash flow. That's the other thing, is everyone's focused on cash flow. We should get into passive income and cash flow. Did you just poke your eye with the glasses?
I almost did. I have done that before. Like,
you almost got away without me being able to see it because you're right behind my tripod.
It happens more often than I like to admit. Well, it's because, one, I have the glasses off so I can't see, and then two, sometimes, and then one of the hinges I need to tighten because one of them will flop in more so than the other, and then as I go like this, it's just like dead on.
I hate when it flops into your eye.
Yeah, loose hinge, just flopping eyes.
We should get into passive income and cash flow at some point. But anyways, a lot of the people are getting in for cash flow, a couple of properties here and there. And then there are going to be the subset that are doing it very much like us. But when I look at that space, it's a lot smaller and fewer and far between. And then you're like, oh, well, there's plenty of real estate to go around.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess that is the nice thing about real estate, right? There's a lot of metropolitan areas, one. And then within those metropolitan areas, there's a lot of inventory.
That's the thing that got me a bit more turned off to the like multifamily apartment building space, because you are competing with a much larger portion of businesses that are trying to build a large business like you are.
Yeah.
Like when Grant was talking a lot about like buying apartment deals, like, he's in the tens, hundreds of millions of dollars a deal. So it would take a while to get there. But once you got there, like, you're doing massive competition with these massive people that have these like ridiculous connections and things. And if you built a large business on single family, you wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
That's why I like this idea of having a ton of properties. He's always like, oh, it's too much overhead to manage and this and that, but that's solvable. I mean, look at Tesla. Did you watch any of the Tesla Battery Day?
No, I did not.
They were talking, I watched Meet Kevin did a highlight video of it that was pretty good. And they were talking at one point about how they've gotten their factories to be able to do basically 2 times the amount of production as one of their other factories. And their goal is to get to be like 4 times the amount of one of their competitors' factories. He was talking about how like that's how you win. If you can have less factories producing 4 times as many as the competitor, you need fewer factories. They need a lot more assets. And for me, it's the same thing. you can have 100 single family homes, and you just need to figure out like operations, right? It should theoretically be mostly economies of scale at a certain point.
Right.
I think it's gonna be the 20 to 40 range that's gonna be really difficult.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
the
could see
10 to
that.
30. I think 10 to
I
30
would,
actually.
yeah, I would think sooner, like right around 10.
Yeah.
Because then, if you have 10 properties in the same area, then you'd imagine, you build these relationships with contractors and the
Yeah.
real estate agents, and then they're able for, the same effort to see do more properties.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, that's I don't even know where that conversation started, but it did.
We'll have to, I mean, I can't wait till we get to that point, that operational excellence piece.
Me too. I think that's the part that we'll do really great at. I hope we'll do really great at. I think so, though.
Let's get there and find out. I want to get
I
there.
think we're like
So,
a people and process like heavy focus, and I think that'll work out well. Okay, so passive income and cash flow. You and I have gone through from like just before we started the financial illiterates to now. We've gone through a bunch of different like waves, right? We and I think we got started a lot and lasted quite a while in the whole like generate passive income and cash flow space. And we're not entirely out of that, right? Passive income is
right.
great depending on how you define it, and we'll get into that in a second. And cash flow can be good depending on what you're using it for. But I think what I see in the space right now is everyone looks at appreciation like gambling, especially in real estate, which is funny because it's probably the least close to gambling of any of the markets for appreciation. And yet people buy Bitcoin. But everyone's so focused on cash flow and passive income. But I don't feel like anyone really like sits down and thinks about how many dollars you have to have invested to generate the cash flow that they want to be able to have in retirement, which is what most people are doing to try and get out of their jobs. And like
Right.
the return on cash, like heavy cash flowing assets in businesses is typically much smaller, and how much more time it's going to take for them to actually hit their goals because they're focusing on cash flow.
hmm
What are your thoughts?
I relate cash flow to things like almost like dividends in the stock
Yep.
market. Just because, like,
And that's exactly what it is.
yeah, like there's no, in order to have enough cash flow to fund my retirement goals, retirement in
Mm-hmm.
quotation marks, because we've talked about how we define retirement, but like it's not going to be, I'm going to have a crazy amount invested just to rely on dividends as cash flow income to support me.
It is.
It's like,
And
it's like one piece of the investment puzzle, but to rely only on cash flow and that to be the only goal, I don't think is very prudent.
and that I think is the issue that I see right now is it's almost like people are jumping the gun, right? Like they're so focused on cash flow, and cash flow feels good. Like when I get paid dividends, that feels great. I love that. Because like
Yeah.
it's actual like cash money in your bank that you could spend if you wanted. But I'm trying to pull up my portfolio now because I have a dividend focused section of M1, and I'm curious what
Yeah.
that's done compared
I
to
think,
my. Okay, so
uh,
dividend focused over the last quarter is up 4%. Okay, U.S. stocks over the same quarter is also up 4%. Oh, that's a bad example. Okay, so it turns out this quarter dividends are doing great. So ignore everything I said and let's move along.
all dividend, all cash flow,
Let me go over
nothing but.
everything. Okay, so if I go all the way back, which is on this account basically to March. If you look at dividend focused, it's up 7.4%, which is, a great return, but we've had insane returns in the market. If you look at my US
Yeah.
stocks portfolio, it's up 20%. If you
20%
look
is
at my
good.
single stock portfolio, it's 23%. International stocks even is 17%. So like if you're focused on cash flow, you how are you getting the capital? Like it just takes so much longer to get there. You know, like for
Yeah.
me, I have that $3 million mark, right? $3 million invested with a 4% withdrawal rate in like a pretty safe portfolio will be everything I need.
Yep.
And I'll be able to do that. As soon as my startup bet pays out.
The angel investing comes on.
I mean the founder investing is what that is. Like
Oh,
when I can finally reap the rewards of the growth we had at Greenbits and probably future growth that they will have at Greenbits, that will be it. That'll cover it. And I'm going to put that in a portfolio that I can withdraw 4% from if I have to, and then I'll be free. But if I had only focused on cash flow up until now, I would have just the money that I have from selling my house in San Jose.
right.
Instead of a net worth of 3-something million, I would have a net worth of like 200,000, which is awful. I mean, like,
Right.
it's, I don't know. It's the idea of passive income and cash flow is great, but I don't feel like anyone has really talked about the sacrifice of focusing on cash flow up front and what it'll actually take to get there.
Yeah. I don't think cash flow is king. I think cash flow is part of the royal family, but it is certainly not king.
Cash flow is important depending on your stage and what you're looking for. In this book that I'm reading by Jason Calacanis, I posted this on LinkedIn today. You'll notice that I'm going to be more active on LinkedIn.
Why did you choose LinkedIn?
Because angel investing.
I see.
I feel like for angel investing, one thing I need to do, and he's going to talk about it in the book. I'm just not there yet. Are you going to add name pronunciation to LinkedIn now? Okay.
You should pronounce your name Trea. Yeah.
Oh boy. The part that I'm going to need is networking with founders to find companies that are even looking for money. No one's going to come to me unless they happen to be the one person that watched the podcast and know that I'm interested in angel investing. So I'm going to have to find them. And luckily, I have the founder title to be able to just reach out to other founders and actually get a conversation. But anyways, he posted this. He had this quote in his book, not posted it. I'm just all over the place right now, and I really like it. It was, oh my God, I did a lot on LinkedIn today. Cool. Okay, no gamble, no future. He was talking about how he used to always go and play, well, he still does, play poker or whatever in the casinos. And all these, I want to say he said that they were Japanese people all the time. They would like go all in or something like that. They'd say, no gamble, no future. And then they'd just like rub their head and neck and all this shit. And I think this gets back into our risk conversation. I feel like this whole theme of this month is just risk. That's where I think people could be just blown away by what they can achieve. I mean, I don't know.
Do you think
I have big goals?
Do you think capitalism rewards risk? Is risk?
Yeah.
Does risk work well with capitalism? That is like the name of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that's pretty much all it is, really. If I was to reset right now, if I went bankrupt, I'd start over. And I didn't have the ambition of hitting $1 billion net worth, right? That might be the first time I've said that on a public place. $1 billion net worth, right? If I didn't have that, I just wanted to not have to work anymore at all.
Yep.
And I look at FIRE and I'm like, okay, so for FIRE, I have to basically cut my spending down to like $40,000 or $50,000 a year max. Well, like one, I can't live here anymore. I have to move somewhere way lower cost of living. My kids are going to have to go to crappier schools. My wife's going to have to find a different job, or maybe not find a job, and then we got to move even lower.
Right.
And then on top of that, it's also still going to take 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sucks. And that's just to get yourself to a place where you have a portfolio that's returning you that amount of money a year, $50,000 to $60,000 a year. So like, you can sacrifice all that for the reward of continuing to sacrifice all that without having to work for someone.
Right.
That's not fun for me. So then you look at Fat Fire, right? Which is looking at like probably a 6-figure outcome. So you're looking in the $3 million range, like I am right now.
First, just to put some numbers to it, I like how a $60,000 a year, you still need $1.5 million invested to do a 4% withdrawal rate.
Exactly.
It's still 1.5 million.
Yeah, it's still 1.5 million. That's why it takes forever to accrue if you can cut your expenses. And, same thing with Fat Fire. Like, you still have to make all those crazy sacrifices for a lot of years just for the hope that, well, I mean, I guess it's less of a hope. It's a lot more solid than my approach, probably, of like being able to not have to work anymore, and you have $3 million that'll pay you, $120,000 a year, and that's just not interesting to me. It's not. Yeah. It's not motivating, right? Like, you could retire in 20 years or 40 years. What's the fucking difference? So I could spend the next 20 years enjoying life and then have to work an extra 20 years. Or I could sacrifice all of the next 20 years and then not have to work anymore now that I'm old.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just not that interesting to me. And I think if people applied a little more risk, I'm not saying like, YOLO Tesla calls with all that you have. Granted, I kind of want to do
calculated risk.
I would say yes, calculated risk, but more so controlled risk. Right? You can control how much of your portfolio is risky. Right. Jason Calacanis in his book recommends 10% of your net worth. So worst case, you lose 10%.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal. No matter what your net worth is. Because the more you think about numbers in terms of percentages, the easier it gets as your portfolio goes up and down. But, 10%. Start a business. That's a huge risk.
Yeah.
And sometimes doesn't require much, if any, capital. Just a lot of time and effort.
Which a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
Some people don't, though. I was having a conversation earlier today about someone who has a close friend that, the name shall remain anonymous here, has a close friend, we'll say, that wants to start a business selling things online. The like store and everything is set up. All of that's good to go. Just need to like get product descriptions and photos in and all that stuff and get a launch. But it's not being done. Instead, it's just constantly like looking at other people doing similar things and being like, oh, I could be doing that. And, I think maybe last podcast or in one of our recent conversations, I mentioned the Gary Vee quote of where he's like, all of us in this room could come up with the next 40 great startup ideas, but execution is everything. When it comes to starting a business and doing anything that we've been talking about, that's all it comes down to is the ability to actually take action and continue doing those actions. That's what I was telling someone earlier. I'm like, the one place I'm not going to fail is taking action. I can guarantee myself that. I will not fail because I didn't take the action and I was waiting for something else. I might fail because I took too many actions. That's okay. I might fail because I didn't have the right idea at the right time. That's okay. But I'm taking action, and I think that's...
You took action.
I think more risk, more action is what I'm getting at. I feel like I'm just on a soapbox tonight.
Do it, man. That's what this live stream is for.
So what's
This
going
is
on
our
in your life?
soapbox. Let's see. Since our Friday podcast, not a whole
Right. Yeah,
lot.
it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, kind of been buried in work lately. It's
Yeah.
kind of what you get when working in a startup.
Yeah, sure
Um,
is.
we are the growth is pretty insane though. So that is at least it's a growing startup.
Budding startup, as they say.
Budding, yeah.
I miss
Wow,
the puns. I miss the
I
puns in the
missed the
cannabis
puns.
industry.
Yeah, it was it was fun. I like how I so while I was at Greenbits, I pitched for a lot of our PR efforts. And the key to PR is to actually write the article for whoever you're pitching. Basically, like with a lot of things in life, if you want help, make it as easy for the person
Yep.
to help you.
Yeah.
So I would basically write headlines. I would write the entire article, provide contact information and quotes. That's a behind the scenes PR thing. Also, most quotes don't actually come from the person who they say that they're from. It's called ghostwriting. But I like how I pitched TechCrunch early on as like a follow up to your guys' success in TechCrunch Disrupt, and I used a lot of puns about a budding industry, a growing
Good.
startup, and they bought it. They
Good.
verbatim used it in one of
Nice.
the articles.
I
So
always forget that we were in TechCrunch Disrupt, to be completely honest. I always forget that that even happened. It was an eternity ago. That was
what was that, like
insane.
2015, 2016?
Those were the good old days.
I remember that because Ben, you and Ben
You hadn't
pulled
even
me
started
in
with
to
us
do.
yet, right?
No, I knew you guys
Yeah.
back then though,
Yeah,
because
because
Ben
you
pulled
were
me
in
in
the
and you
good old
guys
Silicon Valley Business Center.
the SVBC, the greatest business.
Yeah.
I was so underrated.
It was underrated. It was only underrated
Silicon
because
Valley
most of
Business
the
Center,
tenants were realtors and lawyers.
not exactly startups,
Yeah,
but
there were two. There was like yours and ours.
yeah. What the funny thing is though, if I feel like startups go for the glamorous co-working spaces like WeWork, and
Yeah.
there's one called Spaces now. But those ones are so much more expensive. If you're a true
It's
startup,
ridiculous.
I feel like you would have actually gone to the Silicon Valley Business Center because it was cheap. I mean, they had the amenities. They weren't the
It
fanciest
was, dude.
amenities,
I don't know if you know
but
this. You might not. But when we first started using the Valley Business Center, the Civic. Why did we not come up with a better name for it? Anyways, when we started using it, we didn't pay for an office. Ben just paid to use that shared space in the back that was always empty.
that's right.
And then I would just come and join him, and we would put like Post-its and stickies all over
Yeah,
the wall.
I remember him
And we
saying
only
that.
we
Yeah.
only really like he only really got a desk, and we only really got an office because people just complained that we did that.
Yeah, I remember Ben saying like
There were
he
a
was
lot of
just
people
out there
complain
making
about us
phone
there.
calls. Oh, I'm sure. But that was a beautiful space.
It
I
was
love
a
that
great
place.
space, and it was very close to where I lived.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to what was it? Greg Bunker owned it, and his
Greg,
son
yeah,
Cameron.
yep,
His son Cameron was the one that I like. He's the one that kind of brought me into this space. And I rented a
yeah,
workspace from them
yeah.
for the longest time. That's how I met the Green Bits crew.
You gotta be scrappy when you're starting a business, man. You know, and I guess this has a lot of like parallels to life, right? Like we were talking about $1 million houses earlier. It's really easy to want to show the success and want to buy the expensive car and the nice house, and in the business world get the nice office and all the amenities and all that stuff. But like don't buy the stuff that you can't actually like comfortably afford. And when I say afford,
Yeah,
like don't spend all your money on it. It's like, when we're talking about the GTC, the most beautiful car in the world.
that's gonna be your buy. I'm gonna buy something else.
Yeah, I'm
And
not like,
We'll go race on the racetrack.
but we're not going to buy those for a long time. Like
Yeah,
first we're both going to be financially independent before that happens. I can guarantee
yeah.
that. You're
It's
gonna
like
you're
before
gonna
we
have
spoil ourselves.
you're gonna have your nest egg. I'm gonna have mine that are 4% withdrawable for the rest of our lives if we wanted. And then we're going to build up the rest of the investment portfolio to the point where it's netting us enough that skimming a little off the top for that purchase is okay. It's the same thing with business, right? Like we could have bought a nice office and all this stuff and raised money to do it or put our own money in. But what is the ROI on that? It's nothing. It's negative.
I mean, it also goes back to people, that once they get an income and then increase their income, continuing to live below their means, not give in to lifestyle inflation. There are parallels between personal finance and business finance there, where some startups spend money on frivolous things like, fancy offices and that kind of stuff before they're even profitable.
Exactly.
And then, people who have an income and then increase their income and then start buying things, as one of my favorite Gary Vee sayings is, start buying things to impress people that you don't even like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even like the fancy car, I feel like that maybe like anyone that listens to this podcast gets this at this point, but the fancy car is not to just have a fancy car. Like both of us love cars.
It is an addiction.
Like we are true like car people. So like
it's bad.
I'm never gonna buy like I can't even spend like $50 on shoes. I just can't do it. I cannot justify that, dude. I got those Gary V's, those
That's right.
the clouds and dirt. I wore them once because I can't like get myself to wear them. Kimmy bought me the 002s, those like dope black and green ones that I really liked. She bought me those for Christmas. And I asked her to return them because I could not wear $120 shoes. I just couldn't do it.
Well, they're consumables,
And like those
now
are
you can also,
those are $100, right? Like, but now I'm talking about a $150,000 car. That's no problem because I love cars.
Yeah, and I think there's also there's an enjoyable aspect to it, but there's also a revenue generating aspect to it as well. You typically can't make money with cars, but if you buy, it's funny. There is a threshold with cars where if you can either make money or not, at least not lose money. And it's on some of those expensive, rare cars because manufacturers don't always produce them in mass, and then they're hard to get. So if you buy it and use it for a year, you can sell it for about the same price.
There is, though I don't know that I will even consider that aspect of it when purchasing this car.
Yeah, like when we're talking about buying these, it's like we're good. We're financially free. So anything on top of that is
exactly like it
like
costs like $2,000 a month. Like I will probably be passively making at least $4,000 a month at that point before I'd be okay buying it, or I would just buy it in cash with whatever like account that I have. But my total net worth is probably going to be like 15 million or something like that. So it's like a long way out. I mean, hopefully it's not too long, but like these are, and I think these are good goal things to have. Like if you don't have these markers and these things that like really excite you to work hard, what's the point of working hard? I ultimately have the $1 billion net worth goal, but that's kind of like a kind of mind blowing sort of thing to work towards every day. But then I also have the $3 million that is my financial independence goal. And then I have the $150,000 car goal. And like, if you have all these little markers along the way, like it's the next thing to like work for and reach for.
It's what keeps you to, like with Steve Jobs, stay hungry, stay foolish.
Yeah. I mean,
you got to keep going after something.
At one point in time, I was told that, and it had always been my dream to work in startups and possibly found a startup at one point. I had been told at one point that, actually by Ben, the co-founder of Greenbits, which obviously but people listening might not know.
I gotta catch up with Ben.
It's kind of weird sometimes having a conversation with you, but I also have to clarify things that I know you already know because there's other people that are possibly listening. I remember in our apps, like one of our first meetings where I just accepted the job offer and we were going to dinner. I remember him telling me that that he could see me being a CTO of a startup before I'm 30. And that in my head was just like goal. Challenge accepted. And I
Yeah.
did. I did it. What got weird though is I didn't have the next goal. So I became CTO. I was founding the company, and obviously, like, it was just heads down in Greenbits for a very long time. But at a certain point in time, like, and that's around the time like YouTube started and all this and that. Like, you remember, I wanted to like get into the marketing department of the company and all this stuff. Like, it was crazy, like all over the place.
Yeah. Well, you were
Everything.
interested in learning different parts of the business.
Yeah, and what I think I realized, and Kimmy pointed this out to me at one point. She said that prior to that, you know, I always had like a thing that I was going for, and she didn't see what that thing was after that. And I realized it's because I didn't actually have one. You know, like my goal was to be CTO of a startup, and then it was like, cool, now we have to make this startup succeed. But then at some point
Yeah.
along the line, like there wasn't like a next thing or like a next roadmap or even a long distance roadmap. Like wealth maybe, but I couldn't even like elaborate that. So like you'll see some YouTube videos I talk about like winning at the game of business, and like it was like just me spitballing ideas of what the next thing really was and what I really wanted to focus on. And so long story short, without those little markers and milestones and without the long marker, it's really easy to get lost.
Yeah.
And I think when you get lost, that's where lifestyle creep is really dangerous.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, because when you
I've
get
been there.
bored, you just want to spend.
Yeah. I did a lot of that during, I mean, I think I have other reasons behind it, but I have, you know, especially during the quarantine period where I was like, all right, I got to make my living space more comfortable. I kind of let that, I spent more
Yeah.
on things to make my living. Like I set up a whole simulation racing rig, which
Yeah.
I still think is one of my best investments, but
And
it was just like, yeah, it was, like, I was also very pessimistic of kind of what was going on in the world at the time.
yeah.
I'm kind of like, well, I got to at least entertain myself through whatever the hell we're going through as a society
Yeah.
and world right now.
I do think I got lucky in the sense through this whole COVID thing that I never really reached a point where I'm like, oh my God, the world's like could be ending. You know, like I watched the Random Show with Kevin and Tim Ferriss and Kevin Rose, for those that don't know. And I didn't actually watch the one that they were referring to, but I watched a couple in, and they were basically talking about how like a couple of their episodes, like they were really drunk and got into some weird places because they like legit thought the world might be coming to an end. And they're both incredibly smart people.
I mean, it was pretty bleak.
It
It
was
was really bleak.
I feel like I got lucky because I never really thought that. If
That
anything,
is-
I
that is
was
good.
I was I was like, so like when things started to ramp up in the US and everyone was taking it very lightly and not seriously, my mom and I were like really binging on some like on news, both independently of each other because we're in different states, and like digging into it, we're like, this is serious. Like, you know, like I'm telling the family to like not go out, and Kimmy's like, it doesn't really seem all that bad. And then like everything starts shutting down. I'm like, vindication. So maybe maybe that's what it was. I already went through my stressful period of thinking like, oh my God, this is gonna be horrible. And then I started to see remedies. I don't know. I feel like I got lucky in that sense. But on the like building a racing rig, I'm definitely not in the camp of you should cut every possible expense you possibly can and sacrifice everything to reach this goal. Now, I think going back to our earlier conversation, you almost have to if you want to reach financial independence through index funds and dividends. Like if you want to
Right.
reach it that way, you kind of have to. But
Yeah.
if you want to take some risk, you don't have to. Like don't do that. I mean, I spend 50% of my income on 50% of my paycheck on housing, which is way too much. But we're in the place that we want to be, in a house that we really like, in a neighborhood that we love, and that's worth it to me.
Yeah. I think every case will be different.
It is. And I think what I want to get across to anyone that's listening is that it is okay to spend money. Spending money is not a bad thing. Making sure you're spending money on something that's for you is the important part.
Right. And I think
Boom.
piggybacking off of that, well, yeah, it's
Mic
because
drop.
like,
No, I'm not going to drop it. Don't worry.
well, no, I think you gotta, it goes back to paying yourself first because we're in this game for presumably the next like 30 years, right? Like
What game?
average age of retirement is about 60. This game
What's
of
retirement?
business and making money.
We've had that conversation. Oh, wow. I poured that way too much.
I know. But I think most people, it's like, right around 60 is when most people either want to stop working or can no longer work.
Yep.
So you have, much like a professional athlete, your time is limited to playing the game.
Yep.
And you can't, it's not an all out sprint for, a short amount of time and then you're done. Some people are lucky enough to do that, but most people, like, you gotta enjoy the process. You gotta enjoy yourself along the way.
I agree. And that's, yeah, I don't ever want to stop working, like, ever. And when I'm 90, I'm still going to be working. That's just going to be a thing. But I agree. Like, I think the thing that terrifies me most of hearing people that are like, okay, so let's take Graham. Graham is cutting like every expense, every which way he possibly can, according to his YouTube
I don't want to
videos.
live like that.
But that's what he really likes doing. Like, he gets a joy and satisfaction out of that. And I think that's something people don't get. I think a lot of people see that and they're like, we need to cut everything. And so they're sacrificing for all this time. And my biggest fear in people doing that is sacrificing all this time, making all the investments they're told to make, and then something catastrophic happening, or maybe even something not catastrophic happening. Maybe them just making a stupid decision because the markets dropped like they did in March and selling like my wife suggested I do, which I didn't do. I put $30,000 more in.
Which is probably paying dividends right now.
Oh, it's paying. Yeah, it's not
literal
dividends.
dividends.
Well, actually, it is kind of paying little dividends. This month was like crazy high on dividends. Anyways, but my fear is that something catastrophic happens or some like just stupid mistake happens, and then you've sacrificed for 20 years to be basically at square one.
Right.
That would be the worst thing in the world. Like, you sacrificed your happiness through some of your like best years, and you're still having to work until retirement.
I'm all for delaying gratification.
Yeah.
But cutting to the bare minimum for 20 years and then having that wiped away, like that would hurt.
Yeah.
That would hurt a lot.
Yep. That's why our family budget is $10,500 a month. That's a lot of fucking money. I get that. It's a lot of money. It's like $180,000 pre-tax a year.
Well, you should specify, you got 2 adults and 2 young kids. So,
but even still, it's a lot. We spend $4,800, about $5,000 a month on just our house. And then we spend like $500 to $550 a month on my wife's car lease, because that's the car she really wanted. It's not even like a crazy nice car. It's just Hyundai Palisades, ridiculously overpriced and overrated. I hate
should get a Jeep Gladiator.
I hate that car.
Just buy a Jeep Gladiator. Yeah.
I own a Jeep Wrangler. You can't say shit like that to me.
Yeah, I think the Gladiator is pretty cool, man.
I own a 2004 Jeep Wrangler. You cannot say shit like that to me.
That's old, dude. I see the shit on the new.
My Jeep is almost 20
man.
years old.
Oh, I finally have an off-road vehicle too, which is cool.
Yeah, ish.
It's cool.
I own a Jeep Wrangler. I have to say that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you didn't buy a Hummer.
Yeah, I bought an FJ Cruiser.
Oh, there's literally there's windshield decals for Jeeps that are H2 recovery vehicle. FJs at least have some qualifications.
I think,
I would say
they're superior.
It's the perfect vehicle for what you're wanting to do with it, like overland stuff. It's great for that.
Yeah.
And if you want to do rock crawling, it's less good for that.
I'm not going to do.
IFS just isn't very good for rock crawling. I saw this
I'm not
fascinating
gonna
video
do.
the other day. It was straight axle versus IFS. So it was this like Baja truck, right? Like ripping through the desert on all these like crazy bumps and rocks and stuff. And the straight axle one was bouncing all over the fucking place. It looked nuts. I'm like, how are they even still driving this? But then you see the IFS version, and it's just like,
Yeah,
it was
it's like
crazy.
the
I never
the
really
front's
knew
like
the
this and the
benefit of
bottom's like this.
yeah, I didn't know the benefit of IFS until I saw that video. I'm like, oh, but straight axle gives you way more flex on the rocks.
Yeah, IFS. I'm used to IFS just because of the track. That's far superior on the
Yeah,
racetrack.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, God, that's the other thing I can't wait to be doing regularly. That's part of my ambition, is to be able to do like a track day every weekend if I wanted to.
Yeah,
Literally, I would love to be able to fly my car to any racetrack in America for a
see,
weekend,
see,
run it there, and then be done.
that's a good goal and dream to like push towards. Then you have to figure out how much you need to do that.
Oh yeah, it's quite a bit. But the other thing is like that is like a component of the ultimate ambition because
Yeah,
I'm not going to be living in a trailer home while affording to do that.
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
like it's going to be a part of a larger ambition. So
exactly.
that dollar figure is not small.
Yeah, you have to
It's,
have
in the
you have
tens
to
of
have that picture
millions.
to know where you're going.
Yeah. I think one of the I forget which book it was, but it made sense right after I read it. It was just like, you know, very few people became incredibly successful on accident.
Yes.
There was an intention behind, there was an intention and an ambition behind whatever they were doing.
However, a ton of people have become very wealthy on luck. Sort of.
I equate those people as like
So
a very small.
so let me qualify this sort of. When I say on luck, it's because they were available for every single opportunity, and because of that, they got the opportunity. I feel like there's so many people that are just waiting for the right thing or waiting for the right time. It's like I've had the conversation with people before. It's like, I don't know, we maybe want kids, but we're waiting for the right time. And my response is always like, there will literally never be a right time to have kids. Ever. It just won't happen, right? Like, there's never a right time. And if you wait for the right time for things, you're just going to wait. And waiting isn't productive. That's like going back to the like, I'm not going to fail because I didn't take action thing. Like, people, including you, make fun of me for how many fucking projects I have going all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I do. I have, let's see, my main thing, one side, two side, three side, real estate. And then today I added on one more.
Hey, go for it.
The guy I was talking to on the phone, you know who you are, had a great idea, and I'm going to explore that tomorrow. I mean, that's like 6 different things, and most of them are businesses I'm trying to start. 2 of them are contracting gigs. 1 is a full-time gig. 3 of them are actual, real, legitimate businesses I'm trying to start, like a real estate business, the business that I'm doing in the cannabis space again, and then the other one's actually also going to be in the cannabis space. Can't get away from that cannabis space, apparently.
I feel like we're all going to go back to the cannabis space because especially those from Green Bits have
so much leverage there.
You've been developing software for the cannabis industry longer than anybody else.
I need to talk to you about that other idea, actually.
Well, we're wrapping up today's podcast, and we will see you guys next Wednesday.
Wait, are we really? I mean, we should soon because we're already hour 5 now.
I just realized it's an hour, yeah.
But no, what I was saying, something about action and things like that. No. So people getting lucky, like you said, I go really deep on things when I get interested, and so like quite a few people I've gone. Wow, that sounds bad. I've gone deep on. That's okay. All right, cool. It's like the Gary Vee, the Grant Cardone, the Tim Ferriss, like all of these people, right? One of the common threads I would recommend if anyone wants to like gain success or whatever, like really study the people that inspire you. Like listen to everything they have many, many times in a row. And you'll start to draw some of these things. One of the common threads that across all of them, like I'll take Ryan Serhant and Grant Cardone. They both say this. Say yes, and then figure out how. Grant Cardone tells the story of this deal he was trying to close. And this guy said, meet me in Miami tomorrow, and we'll sign the papers. And he had no idea how to get to Miami tomorrow. He did not have his private jet yet. And it was like a real struggle to figure out how to do it. And I don't think he actually ended up pulling it off, but he ended up trying hard enough and explaining that and then getting there the next day, and it worked. And Ryan Serhant has a similar philosophy. He's like, say yes and then figure out how to do it. And I think that sort of philosophy is the way that you make the most of opportunities because you're available to all of the opportunities. And like, yes, that means like in a lot of the cases I'm in, like I do a subpar job at many opportunities compared to what I could do if I just focused on the one. But if I just focused on the one, then I won't get into the story around this one, but you know the backstory of this one. If I just focused on the one, I wouldn't have anything else to be working on right now because that one didn't pan out the way that I expected. So.
Well said.
Anywho, we should be wrapping up. I feel like this was a much more valuable episode than the last one. So
no, I still think the last one was by far the best episode we've ever done. If you're gonna go back and watch
I'm way more sober at the end of this one, so
damn it. How many new riffs did you have?
This is only my second. I mean, technically this is like 2 and 1, but we have the after the podcast episode where you can join us. Just go to our Patreon page and we will be posting the link to the live stream there. And if you can't find our Patreon page, just comment on this video or hit us up on Twitter at Gustin Jabriel Trobrock, and we will give you the Patreon link as soon as we create it because we found out there's interest because you messaged us.
I think, if you want to join us for afterwards, just let us know and we'll let you join us.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I don't know if you can hear that fifth glass pouring, but it's
fifth
poured.
Glass. Okay, yeah. Let's get to the after show because Justin's gonna pass out. All right, bye.
Okay, bye.
Oh my god, I didn't get the outro queued up, and we're gonna.